Good evening, everyone. This is Ron Freeman from Special Olympics, Maryland. I am the venue director for snowshoeing this year, as I have been for the last 6 years, I guess, 4 of which we've actually had winter games. On me from on staff, who will be speaking periodically through the broadcast this evening, are Zach Cintron, who is the new on staff. I'm not sure exactly when you started, Zach, about a month or so ago, just before cycling competition. Zach is the staff lead for snowshoeing. Also on the line tonight is Steve Bennett, who is senior director of competition and coaches training, I believe, is your title, Steve. So we will get started. On the very first screen is just, again, just notification to all of our coaches this evening.
Ron, looks like you lost vocal or audio. We're not hearing you, Ron. I'll step in for a little bit until maybe Ron can get back online. Again, this is Steve Bennett. And again, this is just a promotion. Again, obviously, our largest fundraiser of the year, the Polar Bear Plunge, coming up January 26th. And these slides kind of give directions on how you can create a team and get registered for that. We obviously support that fundraiser, and anybody who's willing and able, come on down, and it's a great event. The other thing I would also echo is that this is being recorded, and the slides that you see tonight and the conversations we have throughout will be sent out to everyone no later than tomorrow. So again, don't need to take notes on all the slides, as we will send these slides out to you. Ron, I don't know if you're back on or not. Okay, so here is the agenda. It's basically the welcome and introductions. So again, we appreciate you guys taking time out of your schedule to be with us tonight to talk about snowshoeing for the upcoming winter season. These are just kind of the things we're going to go over this evening, talk about the schedules, the venues, different rules, and some adaptations and some reminders about what we were going to do last year that didn't come to fruition because of the weather didn't cooperate for us. But I know the forecast this year looks very promising this far out, so we're looking forward to a great competition. So here we basically have the tentative schedule as we look forward to February 24th, which is the Sunday. That will be our time trials. Again, as a reminder, this Winter Games is a combined event. We're having our time trials on Sunday, the opening ceremony in the evening, as well as dinner at Whitetail Resort. And we'll have our time trials in the morning sessions on the 24th. And then Monday and Tuesday, we will go into our finals and competition there. So one of the things that we do want to note here is with the snowshoeing time trials, what we have worked out with Whitetail right now would be where we've had it in the past, where we do the training, which is up by the ops building, because the snow tubing park isn't available to us on Sunday. So the time trials will be there on Sunday, and then Monday and Tuesday we will move over to the tubing park for the competition. So you'll see the warm-ups on Monday, begin around noon after lunch, and we'll go straight into competition. The coaches' meetings following the competition to prepare for the finals on Tuesday as well. We are considering offering a coaches' race for fun and get the coaches out there and test their snowshoeing skills on the snow as well. And Ron, I don't know if you can hear me, if we can go to the Tuesday schedule. I apologize, we have a little technical difficulty we're dealing with right now. Going to go back here, so just bear with us.
Steve, you want to click the little slide thing down in the lower right corner?
Zach's taking it right now.
Oh. Okay. And Zach, go up to where it says display settings. We're seeing the presenter mode. There you go, and swap. There we go. Perfect.
Great.
Whatever
Thanks.
problem Ron was having, I also had. I lost you guys on the phone, so not sure what the issue is.
Gotcha. Here again, Tuesday the 26th, that will be our competition going into the finals on the second day. So we're defining the schedule currently, but want to give you an idea of that as it stands currently. As the slide states, very tentative at this point as we continue to work through scheduling components of the winter games. Next up, this is a basic layout of the resort. Again, if you weren't there the last 2 years, they've done some great improvements and have a very nice new lodge. That's right there in the middle of the screen. That's where the food court and lunch will be served. That's also where dinner will be served on Sunday evening. And the opening ceremony will be on the back side of that house looking up towards the slopes. That will also be occurring, as we mentioned, on Sunday evening. That's where we'll check in on Sunday. Now, moving into Monday and Tuesday, we'll switch the control center over to close where it says the rental center. In that building, we will have signs, and we'll direct everyone there with layouts, and I'll give you some reminders at the pre-competition webinar. So the games registration and deadlines. The training registration is January 11th. So at that time, that's when everybody, all athletes, partners, coaches, volunteers, anybody from the programs should be entered into GMS. And that's through the training site. So just work with your county programs and your GMS individuals to make sure that everyone for the snowshoeing personnel have been entered into GMS. Then on the 22nd of January, that's when everyone will be double checking all the missing forms, making sure everybody's in compliance with medicals, protective behaviors, and all the certifications. And that's the date where all missing forms must be submitted to the headquarters office. And again, we'll communicate all this information to you and give you updates on what's missing, what challenges we're having, etc. The main thing is make sure that all the certifications and medicals are valid through the end of the games, which would be on the 26th. So nothing should expire until the 27th. Obviously, we don't want it to expire on the 27th either. If it's valid through the 26th, that will get you through the games. Then on the 12th of February, that's when all the team rosters and their events must be entered into GMS so that we can go ahead and get the schedules done initially for the time trials and work out any nuances there. So at that time on February 12th, if there's any athlete, partner, or anyone else without an event, they will be deleted or scratched from the games. So really want to make sure that you ensure everyone is registered with their events by the 12th. Next up, coaches' requirements. Again, I'm not going to read through this, but you all should be aware of this. Again, Zach will be sending out some updates soon in regards to the coaches that we have records for from the past of their current status with their Class A's, their background screenings, protective behaviors, the sports certifications, etc. So again, the main thing is that everyone needs to complete and maintain everything through the games. Here are the events that we're currently offering for snowshoeing. So you've got the 25, the 50, 100, 200, 400, 800. the unified 800 as well, 1600 meter, and then the relays as well as the unified relays, the 1, 2, 400, and for both traditional and unified. And again, we briefly talked about the possibility of having a fun race for the coaches, so that we can get you out on the course and see your snowshoeing skills. As noted here in the bottom, the 25 meter and 50 meter race are considered events for athletes that don't have the capability or aren't at the level yet to move up to those longer distance races. So we'll hit on that in a minute as well.
I'm sorry, I just got back on. I'm not sure what happened. I apologize for that, for whatever confusion. I was talking and nobody seemed to be hearing me. So, Steve, you want to continue or do you want me to continue?
Ron, if you want to take it from here, if you can see the slide, the 2019 events and the snowshoeing.
I can, so someone else will have to do the...
Yeah, we've got Zach's doing that now, so you're good to go.
Okay, I apologize for that. I sensed fairly early, but I didn't know how to get back. Okay, 2019 events. The events have not changed from last year to this year, or from 2 years ago to this year. Athletes may compete in up to 3 individual events plus 2 relays. Those 2 relays need to be no more than one each day. So it'll be the 4x2 on Monday, or and either the 4x1 or the 4x4 on Tuesday. Some caveats in here: the athletes in a 25 meter race may also only enter the 50 meter race. Athletes in the 50 can enter the 25 or the 100. Athletes in the 50 can only enter the 4x1 if they're also entered in the 100. So you see the caveat below that. In terms of athletes' abilities, we're just asking the coaches to be monitoring that, so that your athletes are not overwhelmed by the amount of work that they need to do in a particular day. Okay, Zach, next slide. The relays are only open to athletes able to race at least 100 meters. So in order to participate in a relay, they must train for the relay with the other members of his or her relay team. When we get to time trials, we'll have the ability, we'll mark off the ability to do exchanges. We won't be able to mimic the relays themselves because the relays will be down on the oval, down at the tubing area, but we will give you the opportunity to to do some training for handoffs and the like in exchange zones. We also have the 800 meter unified race, where athletes and partners are to run as a tandem pair. If we have any areas who have also participated in long distance running, we do the same event at long distance running, where as long as the athlete and the partner finish within 5 seconds of each other, it's a good race for that pair. Failure to finish within 5 seconds of each other will result in a DQ. And the caveat about athletes may hold hands, but one may not pull, carry, or any action deemed unsafe that will result in a DQ. Next slide. Okay. General information for 2019. Again, like we tried to do last year, time trials and winter games will be the same weekend, Sunday the 24th. At about 2 p.m., we're going to start the time trials, and the dates and times for the winter games themselves in the tubing area are listed as well. We will make the operations building area, if you want to do some practices or some little bit of training on the snow up at the operations building before 2 o'clock. That's fine with us, as long as you don't interfere with the team as we create lane lines, start and finish areas. So as long as we keep out of each other's way, there will be plenty of snow where we won't be marking for you to get some additional practice time. Again, for the competition on Monday and Tuesday, on Monday morning, we'll be setting up the tubing area for our what we expect to be a 200-meter loop, and with the competition beginning around around 12 o'clock. On Tuesday, as long as we have good weather and we don't have to reline the course or reline it significantly, we'll start, I think, I don't have the schedule in front of me right at the moment, somewhere around 9:15 on Tuesday morning. And again, 3 individual events plus 1 relay each day. For the awards, we'll be presenting the awards in the, I'm not sure what they call that building, the lodge, up at sort of the top of the hill above the parking lot. So the awards will be done inside near the family hospitality area. Okay, Zach, next slide. Okay, this is a very rudimentary drawing of our 2 areas. The time trials, again, up at the Mountain Operations Building. We're going to hopefully have 3 bays open, so there'll be plenty of room. And for the games themselves, that loop, again, not drawn to scale. We're going to try to get a full 200-meter loop down at the tubing area. There just physically is not enough room to get a 400-meter loop down there. So we'll do our best to accurately have a 200-meter loop.
Yeah, and just to clarify what Ron was saying, the awards, if you were there 2 years ago, it will be in the lodge that's down by the tubing park, but the awards for snowshoeing will not take place at the main lodge up. That's where the Alpine Award will be.
Yeah, I apologize for perhaps misstating it. It's down by the snow tubing lodge. Okay. Here are the specifications for snowshoes. If you have a reason, if you have a very young athlete or someone who's smaller in stature and you need to bring up a possible exception, just bring it to Zach or I during the morning or before we start time trials, and we'll take a look. So talk to us. Once you've gotten past time trials, what you're wearing at time trials is what you need to be wearing during the games themselves. Next slide, please. Okay. For races longer than 100 meters, and you saw the events that we're having earlier that I'm sure Steve talked about, races longer than 100 meters will have mass start. We will have lanes for up to 100-meter races, and obviously for 25, 50, and 100 meter. To command start, this is what you should be practicing with when you hopefully have snow to have some training, or wherever you do your dry land training. To command start, racers ready and go. With a horn, we will also have a flag at the start for any athletes who are hearing impaired. General rules, all our athletes, and we'll have our clerk of course and our starter enforcing this. You need to start with the tips of your snowshoes behind the starting line, and when the race does involve a curve or a turn, we'll have a waterfall start line out there to hopefully equalize the distances for your athletes. Next slide, please. General rules highlights: 2 false starts equal DQ. And, you know, we understand with weather conditions and wind and all types of things that may occur out there that we'll be cognizant of those kinds of things. But your false start occurs when an athlete significantly moves any body part before the start signal after coming to a still set position. Okay, next slide. We will try, as we always do, we will be enforcing this. Hopefully we will have marshals to enforce this. Only athletes and officials on the course. A rule that we always have in effect is a 2-minute rule. Athletes must progress at least 20 meters every 2 minutes in any race 100 meters or longer. If an athlete falls, has difficulty with equipment, he or she has 2 minutes to correct. And an athlete may not progress more than 3 meters without both snowshoes on their feet. and I think we have this on a subsequent slide. Those 3 meters can't be the last 3 meters of the race. You need to finish the race with both snowshoes on your feet. The course adaptations, these are for the time trials themselves. If you were with us in the past, you know that beyond 100 meters, it's sort of an incline with a dogleg right going up the hill to the 200-meter mark. But for the 50, it's essentially a straight shot and virtually flat. Our whitetail partners out there do a great job of flattening that area for both the 50 and 100 meters. Once you get beyond 100 meters, you will notice a slight incline going towards a 200-meter turnaround spot. And again, this is for time trials. For the 400-meter time trials, it will be an out and back to the 200-meter mark. And this is sort of a description. It's 90 meters out to the start, a slight curve to the right to go uphill, turn around, and with the downhill coming back. Next slide, please, Zach. Okay, for the Winter Games competition, this is a picture of a loop. This is a little picture of a track, so you can sort of ignore some of the markings for 300 meter, 3,000 meter starts and 5,000 meter start. But what we're trying to emphasize here is we're going to get a 100-meter straightaway down on the side of the course closest to the staging area. If you remember what we did 2 years ago, so I think 2 years ago we didn't quite get a full 100 meters out of that. I think it was closer to 90. But we've talked last year. We talked with our partners out at Whitetail to get a little bit more flattened area. So we will get 100 meter for the start. But for the loop, anything greater, as it says, anything greater than 50 meters, essentially it's anything greater than 100 meters. 200 meters and beyond will go around the curve for the races. So for the 100 meters, the loop will not affect us. Okay. Again, rules highlights for the finish. A snowshoer has finished the race when his or her torso crosses the vertical plane of the finish line. It's not the tips of your snowshoes. It's not your arms or your neck or whatever else you can fling in front of you. It's when your torso has crossed the finish line. It's the same rule as we have at track and field events. And as I mentioned earlier, you must be wearing both snowshoes on your feet, not on your hands when crossing the finish line. Next slide. Relays. We use the same baton as we use for a track relay. We will have batons out there, or you may use your own baton if you feel the need to do that. The competitor must pass the baton to his or her teammate within the exchange area, which will be 20 meters in length, and the baton must be within the zone at the time of the exchange. What we will be telling our marshals in terms of placing our athletes in the exchange zone is we will identify the front of the exchange zone and the back of the exchange zone, and we will walk your athlete to the middle of the exchange zone. If you want to coach them to be at the front or at the back based on the athlete, either before them or after them, that's up to you. But what we will do is show them the front and the back and place them in the center of the exchange zone. Then they're on their own. So because we have a 200-meter oval, we will have the exchange zones will be on the straightaways on either side. So if it's a 4x100, it will be right at the start. If it's 4x2, the exchange zones will work out in the straightaway areas where we will never be doing an exchange on a curve. The second from the last bullet, I meant to pull this out and did not. In the 4x1, receiving runners can use the fly zone of 10 meters. the fly zone actually was eliminated by USATF for last year's summer games, and those are the rules we will abide by. So we will not be having a fly zone of 10 meters unless you guys, if you without having a fly zone, what the USATF did in effect was make a 30-meter exchange zone. We discussed this in our office. The reality is, for snowshoeing, we have not had a team in the past use a fly zone for any of the relays. But if you would like to talk about it at our Athletes on Snow in January and early February, we're certainly open to that discussion. Next slide, please. Again, a few rules for relays. The same rules that we have at the track. One of the ones that sometimes catches our athletes is the fourth one down. If the baton is dropped, the person who dropped it must retrieve it, which is usually the incoming runner. The person, what we find sometimes is the incoming runner drops the baton and the next runner picks it up. That is not a valid exchange. The person who dropped it must pick it up. And if it's the first person, that's the person who must pass it off to the next person on the race. Clearly, I didn't know exactly what was on the slide because I talked about how the officials position the athletes. Okay, good. Next
and
slide.
as we go to the next slide there, Ron, just a reminder, if anyone does have questions during the webinar, in your control panel, you can raise your hand or type in a question to the question box, and I'm moderating that right now. We'll also have time for questions at the end.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Yeah, I think I did mention that, but I'm not sure if anybody was hearing me at the time that I was saying that. Relay team. For competitors, nobody, we will not be having any races. There are no relays where a competitor is doing more than one leg of any relay. So it must consist of 4 competitors. If it's a unified relay, it needs to be 2 unified partners and 2 Special Olympics athletes. There is no rules in any way of the order of your athletes. It just needs to be 2 and 2 if it's a unified sports relay team. Okay, next slide. For in the event there is reason to protest, either for whatever reason, only the head coach from a delegation may file a protest. We will have the forms at the control area. You can file it with either myself or with Zach. But as we say at the track, this is a judgment call by one of our officials. You're certainly entitled to file your protest form, but for the most part, if our officials see the finish one way and they agree that that's the finish, that's not likely to be a protest that will be upheld. But you're certainly protect your athletes for whatever reason you think you need to protest a race, but judgment calls by the officials will generally not be upheld. So just keep that in mind. One of the things that we emphasize at all of our events is coaching is not permitted during the race. You can't coach your athlete. We encourage you to give your general encouragement, but it's not just the coaches who are coaching. Sometimes parents, sometimes family members, whatever. Not only is coaching not permitted, certainly not pacing your athletes on the course, either on time trials or on the games themselves. Next slide, please, Zach. I'm not going to go through all of these. All of these will be sent to you, but here are the rules highlights for disqualifications. So we can move past this. I'm not going to read these all to you. You can all read those for yourselves. Again, as we as I mentioned, and people may or may not have heard, depending on my phone, this is the very tentative schedule for time trials. If you remember the races that we do for time trials, we don't do every race. We use the 400-meter race for the time trial for the 400, 800, 1600, and the 4x4. We use the 50-meter for the 25 and the 50, and we use the 100-meter for the 100, the 200, and the 4x1. So again, those times are tentative. If we have our athletes there, we've got the courses marked, we will get you in and out of there. We didn't want to start too soon for the time trials because we didn't want to create a big time lag after time trials before opening ceremony. So that's why we're starting at 2 o'clock, so that we can. You have plenty of time to get the time trials in, but also enough time to rest up and get settled for opening ceremonies a little bit later on that afternoon. Next slide, please, Zach. For this year, we have set up 2 on-snow training days. We have them for Saturday, January 12th, and Saturday, February the 9th. We're going to open up a little bit more than we have in the past because we want to give as many athletes as possible time to be out on snow, which, depending on the season and the weather, you may not have had as many or any opportunities to be on snow. What we're offering is for each area, for each team to bring up to 5 and 6 athletes for each one of those days. We're hoping to keep that cap at 40 athletes. The more athletes that we have, the more of our management team will come out to help you go through some practice techniques, some practice running, some exchange zone changes, and we will be sending out a survey monkey at some time in the next few weeks, I guess, Zach, to see who's interested in bringing up athletes and how many. We'll create a start line, we'll create a finish line, we'll create some lanes so we can simulate anything that you want to do. We will be there on those 2 dates for you to make it the best possible experience for those days, and for also to prepare your athletes a little bit better for time trials and winter games. Okay, next slide. As we just said, here's some key dates. The first 2 we just mentioned, the on-snow training. The pre-competition webinar is on February the 18th. I'm not sure what day of the week that is. And competition for time trials is February 24th, back up at the Ops building, and Winter Games themselves down at the Snow Tubing Park on February 25th and 26th. Not sure. I think, and we're not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about slides for the registration process, but these dates are that you have are the dates that we need to have paperwork into our office at Special Olympics Maryland. If your area's GMS person has a date that he or she needs them earlier than that, which they generally do, so they can do the processing to get them to us, those are the dates that you need to abide by. As always, and this is, go back 1 slide, Zach, please. Your athletes and partners, everyone who is participating in the Winter Games, must participate in time trials on the Sunday in order to compete at Winter Games. This is probably a little bit easier when we do it all the same weekend, where we're not asking you to come out 2 weeks earlier for the time trials. But this is, there's no wiggle room on this. If you want to participate in Winter Games, you must participate in time trials on Sunday. If enter your athletes for your events that you for time trials that you think they might want to participate in, but you will be able to do event changes immediately following time trials, but it must be immediate because we're going to take those times and those events that your athletes have signed up for, and we'll be doing that divisioning that afternoon and that evening. I think most of the rest of the slides, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, are the general registration process and requirements for Special Olympics. We're not going to go through them all. Generally, they're the same slides that you see for any pre-competition or preseason webinars. You will have these resources sent out to you tomorrow. For this last page, for the resources, you have, go back one slide, Zach, please. What I want to emphasize is the last bullet, the last hyperlink for www.specialolympics.org. If we have any new coaches on the webinar this evening, if you go to that website and do a search on Snowshoe, there's a really good coach's guide, which has a lot of embedded videos that you can watch, show your athletes or show your assistant coaches for many, many topics. Racing uphill, racing downhill, starts, stops, falling, getting back up. So for new coaches and for coaches who certainly have not had competition in 2 years, because we didn't have it last year, that's a good refresher. So keep that in mind as another resource for you for this year's snowshoeing. Okay.
And I can take a couple of the next slides, Ron. Thank you very much. This is Steve. So again, this is just for general information. As Ron has mentioned, Zach is our new lead from a staff perspective for snowshoeing, and obviously Ron is our venue director. So either one of those are your go-to people for snowshoeing. We list our other sports directors here as a general reference point. So Kendall is the staff liaison for alpine skiing. Melissa Anger is our other sports director. She'll be working with us at the Winter Games in the Control Center, registration and that kind of thing. So again, just want you to have their information. So the next couple slides here, the registration forms and procedures, as Ron mentioned, this is just so you have an idea of what forms we're talking about. We're not going to go through these. We'll just scan through them real quick. But before we get to the scanning, one thing we really want to stress, as we always do, is just a reminder as coaches, it's incumbent upon you guys to make sure that if there's any coaches or volunteers that you need to check with your GMS and your area director to make sure that all of their certifications are up to date from a volunteer application standpoint. As important, but maybe a little bit more important, is any athlete or partner must have a valid medical before they can do any training, any practices, any competition whatsoever. So that's from a liability perspective for yourselves as well as for Special Olympics. So as coaches, make sure that you have the valid medicals for the athletes, that they are up to date and valid before they even start training with you or doing anything involved with Special Olympics. Can't stress that enough, that without that, they shouldn't be participating in Special Olympics. Again, it's a liability perspective. And again, just work with your area leadership, your county directors, and other program people there that help with the processing, all of the forms, the GMS entries, etc. So just contact your local people. They'll be happy to help you out. And again, we're just going to go through these slides. Again, it's not something we're going to spend time on this evening, but again, we just include it here for a reference for yourselves so that you can become familiar with the forms if you haven't seen them. One thing we will take a look at is, as coaches, one thing that's always a good practice is to have all the athlete medicals with you at practices, etc., so that if something does happen and medical needs to be called, or that you have those forms in place and can speak with the medical personnel in regards to the conditions or the medications or whatever that the athletes may be taking. You also see an incident report in these forms. That's something else that's good practice to have on yourself during practice. If there's any injury, if there's any broken equipment, anything of that nature, we fill out those papers and submit those so that we can submit those to our insurance company so they're aware of anything that happened, whether it's loss of property or injuries, as I mentioned. And again, Zach's just flipping through the pages there. So at this time, I've been monitoring. I didn't see any hands raised or any questions. I'll do one last check here. As we're checking for that, again, from a Special Olympics perspective, we really appreciate your time this evening. But more importantly, the time that you spend with the athletes and partners and your fellow coaches and volunteers, for all the time that you've put in to train the athletes, to get them to showcase their skills and their abilities and work with them. Obviously, without you guys, Special Olympics doesn't happen. So we can't emphasize that enough, that we appreciate everything you guys do for the athletes and partners to make it an enjoyable experience and give them the opportunities that they deserve and we want to showcase. Again, I don't see any questions, so at this time, again, we thank you very much. If you have any questions that you think about after this, don't hesitate to contact Zach and Ron, and they'll be more than happy to get back in touch with you. With that, unless anybody else has...
I apologize for my phone. I'm not sure what happened, so hopefully that won't happen again in any other webinar. But I do apologize for the little breach, during the very beginning of the webinar. Sorry about that.
No problem. All right, everyone. With that, I wish you well and hope you have a good evening and a good weekend. And we look forward to seeing everybody at the trainings and the Winter Games. Thank you very much.